In this video, I'm going to walk you through the process I use to design a bed for my garden. I am redesigning an existing bed, but the process I use is the same for both new and existing beds. I've removed most of the old plants. There's one sedum on the right side that I may keep, and the plants on the left side still need to be removed. The first thing I do with a new garden project is to develop a list of goals. What is it that I want to accomplish? Once I understand my goals, other decisions become so much easier. This bed is on a steep hill, making maintenance very difficult, and my garden is growing too big. It is 6 acres in size and over an acre of actual beds. I want this new bed to be ultra low maintenance. It is visible from much of the garden, and whenever I have visitors, they always go up the hill to see the Japanese tea house at the top. So this bed needs to have year-long interest. Visitors approaching the hill stop at the bottom of the hill and look up at the tea house, so the bed needs to look good from a distance. The previous design was quite good for this. There was always color in this bed. It contained large patches of plants that flowered well and were quite visible at a distance. As visitors go up the hill, the pathway goes right past this bed, and they get a very close-up view, so this bed also needs to be interesting up close. Tall plants won't work here because that would block the view of the tea house, which is the major focal point of the garden. Plants need to be under 3 feet tall, and I think they'll look even better if they're shorter than that. After setting goals, I next assess the site. This is on a very steep hill, and mulch tends to wash off in heavy rains. It would be better if the ground was completely covered with plants so I don't need to mulch. It is a pie shape and fairly small, ranging in depth from 6 feet on the left side to a few inches on the right. The soil is very sandy and dry. I could amend the soil and add lots of compost, but that is difficult on such a slope, and it's not my style of gardening. I select plants for the soil nature has given me, rather than try to change the soil to meet the needs of the plants. So I'll just live with the sandy soil. The bed can be watered with a hose, but given the location of my water taps, watering is difficult. Once plants are established, they almost never get watered. The bed is in full sun and gets absolutely no shade. Given these conditions, I'll have to be very selective about the plants. The next step in design is to think about style. Since this bed is in the middle of an existing garden, and due to its small size, it needs to have the same style as the rest of the garden, which is a natural, informal look. This style is also the best for low maintenance. The original garden was designed to give the feeling of a climb up the side of a mountain, and so the plants need to look very natural. The sun, sandy soil, and mountain feeling suggest a rock garden. I have several other rock gardens already. This one is a raised bed that is home to many miniature plants, and I just love this garden, but it requires more maintenance than any other garden I have. So this design is rejected because it does not meet my goals. Here's another rock garden that contains larger plants. It's still a lot of work, but less work than the previous one. The main problem here is that there is too much space between plants, which results in weeds. I could use this design and plant things closer together. This perennial bed is also nice, but due to its narrow width, it has a limited number of plants and they don't provide a year-long interest. This is a daylily collection. It too suffers from a lack of interest for a good part of the season, but the addition of the vertical rock artwork compensates for this. It is also at the edge of the garden, and visitors only go there when it is in bloom, so it works for this location. This garden is zero maintenance, but placing it in the middle of a hill would not work since it only looks good for a month in summer. So I am starting to see the finished garden in my head. A kind of rock garden, but one that contains only larger plants that can grow together to completely cover the soil. I could also add a few more rocks to provide variety and year-long interest, and they would also help to keep the soil from eroding. I'm seeing a few specimen plants sprinkled through the bed, with ground covers filling the spaces between them. The ground covers would provide color from a distance, and the specimen plants would add the interest up close. It is now time for plants. Normally when I create a new garden, I don't pick plants for it, except in a very general way. I love growing unknown plants, so I tend to go out, buy stuff, plant it, and see how it does. Over time, I make changes, pull some things out, add some new plants, move things around, until I like the look of the bed. This is not the best idea if you want a perfect looking garden, but it is ideal if you're a plant collector like me. For this bed, I want to do it differently. Trying a bunch of new things is more work, and I want to avoid that. Instead, I'm going to use plants that I already have and know. That way, I can be sure to reduce the maintenance and have a good-looking garden right away. It's time to wander around the garden and pick the perfect plants. I love the dark purple-red plant in the middle here. It is a barberry called Concord, and it stays fairly short and can be pruned even shorter if need be. It makes a big splash in a sea of green and is colorful all year long. I have some cutting started, and I might plant 3 in a very tight group. In time, they would be pruned to look like one larger plant, and barberries just laugh at sun and dry. I really like using evergreens in this type of garden. They look good all year long, are available in various shades of yellow to green to blue, and if you pick the right ones, they're tough as nails. This hugging juniper is a good example. It can be kept low with pruning or allowed to grow a bit taller, and you can even prune it into an upright shape. The only reason for not using this plant is that I already have it in several locations in the garden, but maybe I just need one more. This low-growing Persicaria called Dimity spreads nicely but can be easily contained. It forms a solid ground cover with no weeds underneath. I have it in another part of the garden growing up a rock, and it does not mind being dry, and a bonus is the long flowering season. This is Daphne Lawrence Crocker. It grows quite slow, forming an evergreen ball that flowers in spring and sporadically in late summer. I don't know how well it will do in very sandy soil, but it can take the sun and likes good drainage. It is probably worth a try. It is hard to find in nurseries, so I might have to propagate it from cuttings. Miniature evergreens are great plants that more people should grow. You can select a plant to grow to almost any size you want. My smallest one grows about 1/4 inch a year, if that. This one has a couple inches a year. It would be a good addition, and then in 10 years when it gets too big, I'll just replace it. The plants I've mentioned would make a good start. I'll fill in the remaining spaces with some dianthus and slower growing sedum to give variety and some flower power. Once these plants are established, they should require no maintenance. I will have to take out some excess growth from the ground covers, like the sedum, dianthus, and persicaria. Maybe 15 minutes of work once a year. The bed will never need watering, doesn't need to be mulched, and should require virtually no weeding after a year or two, once plants fill in. The design process I've used here is the same one I use for all my personal gardens. If I was working on someone else's garden, I would do the same thing, but spend more time understanding the goals. They form the basis of all design decisions. Unfortunately, a lot of gardeners skip this step and want to get right into plants. Plants come last in the design process. You need to make the hard decisions before you do the fun stuff, the plants. If you follow this rule, it will result in a better design. It's time for me to sign off and go do some planting. Have a great day in the garden.